Good morning. Good morning. Morning, Barbara. Lenny. Lillian. Susie. Avril. Morning, Ewan. Morning, Ian. Rab. James. Mark. Getting there. Morning, Brian. Morning, Margaret. Morning, Stuart. Kirsty. Morning, Karen. Maureen. Eileen. Morning, Rosalind. Morning, Tina. Paul. Morning, Daisy. Steve. Garrett. Morning, Alison. Morning, Derek. Nearly there. Morning, Steve. You're number 100, so let's get this broadcast underway. Indytruck Davy in the truck. Coming to you today. Morning, Colin. Coming to you today from the Royston area of Glasgow, where it is overcast and it is 14 degrees. Quite clammy, actually. For, not bad at all. So that is... Excuse me, folks. There's always one, isn't there? Anyway, that's the weather forecast for Royston, the Royston area of Glasgow. You want to know what the weather's like where you are? Look out the bloody windy. Alright, now, I'd like to say I thought I'd went a wee bit too far yesterday, but when I put my apologies out saying sometimes a truck driver in me gets out, you guys seem to think it wasn't that bad. So, I'll try and keep a truck driver a wee bit in check, but sometimes it just happens, folks. I'm a truck driver. What can I say? Colourful metaphors and sweary words are something that I do now and again, especially when I'm bloody well angry. Good morning, Hugh. Alright. Anyway, let's get on the way. Alright, the latest COVID figures are 1,311 new cases recorded from Tuesday to Wednesday, with 1,245 people in hospital, of which 16 are in the intensive care units. 20 deaths were recorded from Tuesday to Wednesday, with COVID as a contributor factor in their deaths, and our condolences go to all the families involved. Alright. Right, I don't have much for you today because we're in the purdah period and a lot of stuff is off limits at the moment, But let's move on. Wednesday started with two main stories in the rags. First Minister branded a liar by industrialists who couldn't fulfil a contract he entered into and failed to deliver on. And BP announces a quarterly profits of £1.6 billion. There's calls for windfall tax on big energy companies. Big energy giants are rampant profiteering, while pensioners ride buses all day to keep warm and families struggle to heat and eat. And as we all know about Bojo's performance with Susanna Reid, there is more that the government in Westminster could do. They're just not willing to do it. And as Susanna Reid told Bojo, when Bojo said, big companies have to be able to invest, Susanna Reid reminded him, it's not his business to worry about big companies being able to invest. Primary duty of government is to look after its people. And this particular Conservative government are neglecting the primary duties of government. When grandma's riding a bus all day to stay warm and there's 5 million kids going to bed hungry every night, I'm afraid this government is totally failing. Alright? As for the First Minister being branded a liar by industrialist Jim McCall, who couldn't fulfil a contract he entered into and failed to deliver on, well, this was actually orchestrated by the BBC, and I was very surprised that Jim McCall and the First Minister, as I said, allowed themselves to be manipulated in this manner. But as I've said repeatedly, Mr McCall entered into a contract which he failed to fulfil and then walked away from that contract, leaving the Scottish Government in the position where they either let the yard fail or they stepped in. Stepping in was the right thing to do, as the First Minister has said, because that saved 400 people's jobs and it meant that 400 families weren't on the breadline along with the other 5.5 million of them. Okay, moving on. Wednesday here in Scotland, the day starts with GMS front-loading the paper review with the story of the industrialist calling the First Minister a liar. Now, as I said, the story was initiated by the BBC and it was picked up by the rags, especially the right-wing loony rags, the Fail and the Express, and the BBC yesterday morning front-loaded their paper review with this stuff. The BBC are in full-on propaganda mode to try and stop the SNP for having an impressive result this time. As we've already discussed, Professor John Curtis, the UK's leading psephologist, predicts that the SNP are going to have a really good election. Okay. Anyway. Let's move on. Well, the state propaganda machine is knocking the First Minister and the Scottish Government up here down that road. The Environment Minister, George Eustice, was trotted out to defend the government stance on the cost of living crisis. Mr Eustice defended not introducing a windfall tax on oil and gas giants, saying there wasn't they want them to invest and a windfall tax would put them off. Now, GMB tells Eustice about the £6.1 billion worth of profits at BP, and the fact that the chief executive of BP said, go ahead and impose that windfall tax, we don't mind. We're still going to invest anyway, we're cash rich. And investing when prices are this high means we're going to stay cash rich. Because the energy costs are not coming down anytime soon, folks, don't kid yourself. You know. Anyway, they're back on Izzy, or Lizzie, whatever the woman's name is, who's the granny that's riding the buses. And George Eustice turns around and says, never mind, this woman's 77-year-old. She's on a state pension. She's claiming all the benefits she can get. And she's still having to ride the bus to Stay Wareham during the day. She's only feeding herself once a day. That's how poor this woman is. And George Eustice says, there's 1 million job vacancies out there. Go and get a bloody job. Wow, a 77-year-old woman's to go and find a job. Oofed. Absolutely shows you how uncaring these buggers are. And then he goes on to talk about, the money given to councils in order to help alleviate the pressure on struggling families. And Susanna Reid says to Eustice, 150 quid, you spanner. It's not even going to touch the sides. But more importantly, you're talking about the universal credit ladder for people who are in work and things like that. You did absolutely nothing for pensioners and nothing for those who are on state benefits. Nothing. And then George Eustice goes on to say, we'll give them another 200 quid a council tax relief down the line. So 350 quid in order to alleviate a cost of living crisis which has seen electricity bills double. And most households go for 1,500 quid a year to £3,000 a year. And they're offering 350 quid to alleviate the problem. Wow, we've got food price inflation at 5% and rising. The Bank of England is expected to put up interest rates again, taking to 1%. Doesn't sound a lot unless you got a big mortgage. Or if you've got a lot of debts. Because it might be 1% the base rate. You're not getting charged the base rate on your mortgage. You're not getting charged the base rate on your debt. Anyway, as Professor Richard Murphy has pointed out many times, raising interest rates is no way to combat inflation. In fact, inflation isn't really that big a problem. The best way to combat inflation is to just kill it dead by saying, all right, inflation's at 7%, everybody's pay rise at 7%. You've just negated inflation altogether. Just negated it. The need for interest rate rises, nothing. And as Professor Murphy also points out, there isn't a national debt that they're battering on about. It's just figures in the ledger. Why do you think they can spend billions on sending armaments to Ukraine? That magic money tree works for that, but doesn't work for anything else. Alright, so Eustice makes an absolute arse himself and tells pensioners to go and get jobs. There's 1 million jobs out there in the economy. Well, there's a Davy says here, most of these jobs are low-paid jobs and they're not in the area where the population centres are. In other words, the rural jobs, picking farms and things like that. The other sectors that need these things, food processing, require trained butchers for that sort of thing. The other, in IT. That's why Bojo was out in India last week begging for IT specialists from the Indian continent to come here. Whereas prior to that, of course, these workers would all come in for the EU. But if you think fruit pickers are coming for India and then going home again, they'll know. Whereas Eastern Europeans, the fruit pickers come here, made their money and went back here to complete their educations at universities and things like that. This is an absolute disaster. And so was Eustace's interview. Right, next up on GMB was Starmer. And Starmer was there to talk about the cost of living crisis. Now this is, listen, when I get into this one, you're going to get it. Right? Now, and Starmer's making his pitch to the electorate for the next general election down that road, so he is. So he's talking about windfall taxes and what he can do to alleviate the cost of living crisis. A lot of tosh, really. I mean, a lot of tosh, but we'll get to why it's a lot of tosh. He was also asked about Partygate, his version of Partygate. You know, that I think it was Durham, where they had a bevy session, ate pizza, and he hung out for a while. More people that was allowed. Anyway, he says he hasn't been contacted by Durham Police, but I'm sure the Tories are on it this morning demanding Durham Police investigate the situation. Now, the interesting thing about Starmer, and this is the interesting part here, folks, the interesting thing about Starmer making his pitch to be the next Prime Minister, he's no chance. Why is he no chance? Well, this isn't new stuff, because you heard me talk about this before. We've just had the elections bill passed, taking 3 million of the population out of the ability to vote, because they won't have the sort of identification that is required to vote, because you now need voter ID. So that'll be a driving licence, a passport, or something like that, or even a citizen's card. But it's 15 quid for a citizen's card. If you don't have 15 quid for a citizen's card and you've got kids to feed, you're not getting to vote. So 3 million people who are likely to vote Labour have just been ripped right out of the voting system with the elections bill just passing. But here's the interesting thing. Coming hard on the heels of this election bill will be the boundaries bill, where the Tories are going to gerrymander the constituencies so that they favour the Tories. So Starmer can waste his time pitching his voice and his crap to the English electorate all he wants. He ain't getting elected as the next Prime Minister, because the Tories will have gerrymandered the boundaries, and the Tories will have taken that many people out of the voting system that Labour's absolutely no chance. So the Tories will be in power down that road for quite a while to come, and people up here in Scotland need to get that into their heads. The other thing about that is that will see Wales, I think, losing 8 parliamentary seats, and Scotland losing 3 parliamentary seats. Those seats will go into England. So the amount of MPs in England will increase. And they've said they've gerrymandered the boundaries, so those, 11 new MPs are likely to be 11 Tory MPs. People don't seem to be paying much attention to what's going on here. The Tories are setting it up so that they will be in power forever. The system is being rigged so that only the elite and those who believe they are born to rule and who are being educated and fostered that idea will be allowed to rule. And although Labour are the second cheek of the same arse, it looks as if there's just about to be a butt-ectomy. It looks like that arse is going down to one cheek, the way that things are being gerrymandered down that road. So Starmer was wasting his time with his punt to the electorate, because there isn't going to be a Labour government for as long as there's no revolution down that bloody road. It's going to be a one-party state. Now, I've spoken about this over the last couple of years. Those of you who have been watching for the last couple of years will understand it and know that I've spoken about the boundary changes coming and the Election Act. Well, the Election Act passed. That's it. Voter ID is being introduced for the next general election and any other election down that road in between. Okie dokie. So Starmer, you can just forget Starmer. You can forget the Labour Party. They're done. There's going to be a butt-ectomy down that road, and there's only one cheek of the arse from now on. No two cheeks, just one. Right, moving on. On Wednesday, First Minister's questions is on a day early. Right, and wow, was the First Minister no on form. I think the First Minister's been watching my videos, kids. She didn't have to give them a spanking. The only thing that was missing was Davy's sweary words. In fact, almost to a T, did the First Minister really rattle off Davy's rant for yesterday. I think she must have been sitting in her office before she hit the bloody chamber, having a laugh. I think I know who might be responsible for that. But wow, brilliant. The First Minister was in form. Anyway, first up was Dross, and the first thing he went on was Ferguson Marine. You know, he's talking about shredded documents and all that shite. There's a muppet talking about 100 million quid's worth of overcosts on a couple of tubs when Crossrail's a couple of billion quid over. HS2's billions of quid there. The Tories. And let's look at Bojo's record. I mean, failed to build a single bridge. 53 million quid for a bridge that didn't appear in London, and God knows how much he spent out on a feasibility a feasibility project to see if he could build a bridge from Scotland to Ireland, Loonball. Dross has got his cheek to talk about the First Minister. Anyway, the First Minister he rattles his arse and says, look, Jim McCall isn't an uninterested party here, and there he is, he's suing the Scottish Government, if I remember correctly. And the Scottish Government had to pick up on insurance policies and things like that Mr McCall actually welched on. If I remember correctly, it cost the Scottish Government 12.5 million quid to sort that mess with insurance policies out. So Dross gets his bum kicked in that one. Alright. And then Dross goes on the First Minister's failings in government. You know, education crap, too many drug deaths, hospitals crap, the lot. Well, the First Minister didn't miss one, did she? She really got ranted right into him, man. She had a long list, and I mean a long list, and I've read them out before, a long list of the SNP's achievements, you know. Redoing the school estates, updating the roads estate, you know, baby box, free tuition fees. The list was bloody endless, 100,000 affordable houses. And then she turns to Dross and she gives it A. And let's have a look at what the Tories have achieved in 12 years in government. 12 years of austerity, she said. Brexit, she said. The cost of living crisis. And worst of all, Bojo the bloody clown! And our First Minister was right on form. I was pissing myself laughing at it. Absolutely brilliant. Mega rant. Did they miss him for a while? As I say, the only thing that was missing was my sweary words. She was right on. And then just to scrape the bottom of the barrel, next up, Dross goes on sex surveys in school. And our First Minister just did enough of a wee idiot and he went like, what? Is that how low you're going? You're going to scrape that out of the barrel. Let's cover this sex survey thing in schools anyway. I remember being 14 and filling out sex surveys in school. And Davy's 54. Surveying kids' sexual activity isn't new. It's all to do with providing a proper family health care for them, make sure they don't get up a duff and make mistakes while they're doing it. Because kids will experiment. You know? Kids will experiment, I know. I was a teenager myself. You were all teenagers. You know. Anyway, the First Minister goes like, what? You're scraping the bottom barrel going that low? Listen to this coming for this spineless wonder. Hey, you're not a leader, you're a follower. Slap, arse kicked, naughty step, off ye go. And the whole time Dross is getting his hair scalped, he's sitting there smug. But you know they like the Tories, or they like a wee bit of corporal punishment. Dross the whipping boy. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, next up was Poverty Price Sarwar, and he went on funding for councils. Yeah, he's claiming that the SNP had cut council funding and things like that. So the First Minister just whaps him right out of the chops and say, you kidding? Hey, we've had our budget cut by 5%, but we've increased council budgets by 6%. You know, and then Sarwar comes away with, you've cut the core funding for this, you've cut the core funding for that, you've cut the core funding for the next thing. First Minister just slaps him and says, don't be stupid, boy. You're not counting the $2 billion we're putting into this bit. The extra childcare. You're not counting the 750 million we give to head teachers to support children direct. You know. So, Sarwar. Poverty pies on about cutting. Anyway, the First Minister then rattles off the figures. She says, our the time period, he's talking about 2013, you know, right? She says, the time period you're talking about, you spanner, we've increased council funding across the board by 2.6%. And Labour-run Wales, it's been cut by 14.6%. And then Sarwar gets up and says, you're the First Minister of Scotland. Stop talking about us making an arse of it in Wales. The First Minister bounces back at her feet and says, hey, it's fair to make comparisons so that people know how crap yous are. Anyway, so Sarwar gets his bahookie well kicked and sent to the naughty step. The only thing she didn't say to him was, listen, you have the problem, you don't pay your own workers a decent wage. I was waiting on that one coming, see if she'd have come away with that one. David would have been cock a hoop. David would have fell off his chair laughing. It was absolutely brilliant. The First Minister was right on form. She was not taking any piss and she wasn't taking any prisoners. She didn't half kick the bahookies of A2. I'll tell you what, they didn't get to sit in the naughty step. The horses had been booted that badly. They stand in the corner with dunce caps on. Absolutely stunning. I'm going to watch it again, actually. I did watch it a couple of times last night. But if you want some snippets of it, it's on my timeline. As she gets battered into the pair of them, it's absolutely hilarious. Some of the funniest stuff I've seen at any point in any parliament anywhere on the planet. It was brilliant. And I'm that sort of nerd that I look into these different places just to see how things are done. But brilliant. First Minister's was a gas. I'll tell you what, you could have put it out as a comedy show at night. That's how noted. Hey, how he slapped somebody down by the First Minister of Scotland. It was absolutely brilliant. I swear to God, I was pissing myself laughing. As I say, I think she'd be watching my videos before she went on. Yeah, the only thing she didn't do was swear. And it looked as if she wanted to. You've seen the frustration in her face a couple of times and the anger. Oh, yeah, I thought she was going to shoot lasers through the glasses. Anyway, Dross and Poverty Pie get their arses well kicked and sent in a naughty step. But as I say, when they go there, they couldn't sit down. Their arses were that there. So they stand in the corner with dunce caps on. Right, right, let's move on. What else we go? Because as I say, I've not got a lot. Nothing, not very much actually sprung out at me yesterday, to be honest with you. You know, there wasn't very much sprung out at me. The next thing sprung out at me was the situation with the estrogen and women's going through the menopause and the availability of menopause drugs. Now, apparently there's a shortage of them, and there's a specific type of estrogen which is identical to the stuff that the human body produces, which wasn't being made available on NHS Scotland across the board. So the Scottish Medicals Approvals Committee have asked the company who make this estrogen to resubmit, so it looks as if the women are going to get better help for the menopause, which is a great thing because the dragon's going through the menopause now, and you guys have got absolutely no idea how bad it is to live with a dragon when it's going through the menopause. Wow. And dragons living for thousands of years, they get through the menopause every 1,000 years. It's nuts. Thank Christ I'm only around for a one. Okay, right, what else did we have? Oh, yesterday, moving on down that road, and new sanctions against the Russians. All UK-based accountancy firms, project management firms, legal firms and advertising agencies are banned from working with Russian firms. Liz Truss introduced 63 new sanctions. Kwasi Kwarteng, the business minister, said the UK professional services are extremely valuable. Cutting Russians out of the access from these services will help ensure Russia fails in Ukraine. I'm not quite sure about that. All that will happen is they'll go to Singapore for that expertise, they'll go to Hong Kong for that expertise. they might even be cheeky enough to go to maybe Frankfurt or Paris for that expertise, I don't know. But anyway, new sanctions have been imposed. But as I say, the UK, Kwasi Kwarteng saying the UK professional services are extremely valuable. They are, but they're not the only place on the planet where you can buy them. So what will happen is Russia will just look somewhere else for that stuff, you know. And when this one came up, the only thing I could think of was Akanchi. I don't know if you a lot remember Akanchi. That's the mob that the UK government hired 2 years out for the referendum, the last one, in order to promote the British state in Scotland. And they were the advertising agency that came up with the No Borders campaign. You know, that lovely hot, the UK is like a nice hot cup of chocolate. It's all cuddly and I like it, and I'm keeping it campaign that we get battered with for 2 days prior to the last referendum. Just after the three amigos had issued the vow. But anyway, I'll be surprised if a company like Akanchi doesn't nip in there, because Russia's needing its image promoted, and that's what Akanchi does. It promotes the image of nations. And believe it or not, the chief executive, the owner of Akanchi, is now a lord, and he works in the Scotland office to promote the UK here in Scotland. His name is Malcolm Offord, and he was promoted to the House of Lords after that campaign. And he is now Lord Offord, and he runs the UK's propaganda unit here in Scotland. So there you go, folks, if you didn't know that. The guy who runs Akanchi, which is an advertising agency which promotes states, especially rogue states, like Russia and Rwanda, and the UK and Scotland. Anyway, he was promoted to the House of Lords. He now works in the Scotland office, actually in charge of the propaganda that we're seeing, and the money that's being dragged in to be spent on advertising the British state here in Scotland. It's Lord Malcolm Offord who is running the department in the Scotland office along there in Edinburgh. Right, so professional services are no longer, UK professional services are no longer available to the Russians. Right, also Wednesday, the EU announced plans to ban Russian oil imports by the end of the year. Well, that was a plan, but by the end of the day, there was 3 states out there offering, saying they were going to veto the plan. You had Hungary, I think it was can't mind the other two now. I do beg your pardon, I haven't wrote it down. But the big one's Hungary. Hungary told them straight, you know, we're going to veto this plan. There's some of the Eastern European states are highly dependent on. Slovakia was another one. I was like, highly dependent on. No, it wasn't Slovakia, Slovenia, I think it was. Highly dependent on Russian oil and gas. And Hungary is especially one of them that are really dependent on Russian oil and gas. Transition on to getting your oil and gas from somewhere else, especially if it's going to be brought in a liquid gas form and taken to terminals. You've got to build the terminals. You've got to have you've got to be big enough ports to take the tankers, and you've got to be willing to pay the extra for importing the stuff. Whereas these countries are getting it straight through a pipeline from Russia. It's cheaper, and it's quicker, and it's cleaner. So Europe's plans to wean itself off Russian oil and gas are up in the air at the moment, so we'll see where that goes. Okay. And last night, just before I went to bed, and this is the big story this morning, Shell announces $9.1 billion worth of profits for the first quarter of this year, or 7.1 billion pounds, whatever way you want to put it. And according to what we're being told, this is a record for Shell in its history. Now you've got to remember, but as well as that 9.1 billion which they're talking about for extracting oil and gas and selling oil and gas, Shell also make money out of refining it and selling it as petrol. You know, so but they're different businesses, so the numbers will come in at different times. But the big oil and gas giants are making an absolute killing, while Granny's riding the bus to stay warm. parents are deciding whether to feed their kids or heat their houses. It's obscene. It's rampant profiteering. We are being gouged. And we're being gouged especially because we're at the EU. Because if we were still in the EU, then caps could have been put on these buggers to make them take the hit. The way they have in France, the way they have in Germany, the way they have in Italy, the way they have right across Europe, actually. But because we are out the EU, those caps no longer apply to us. So the UK government is actually, they're actually assisting the oil and gas giants to gouge us. But there's no surprise in that, because when all these commodities were privatised and things like that, you know, and we're talking about when the UK state oil was, you know, allowed to be drilled by private companies and things like that. The Tories are all shareholders. Same with all the other state utility companies and things like that were all sold off at BT and all that. Tories are the ones that have the money to get and buy the shares. So actually, the gouging of the UK public's going straight into the coffers of the Tory elite. It was announced that Shell had paid $4.1 billion out in dividends to shareholders. Some of them, of course, will be pension companies through hedge funds and things like that. But once again, the poorest people in society don't have private pensions. They don't have any money to put away in private pensions. You know? And to be honest with you, because Davy's got to keep an eye on this thing, Davy has got a private pension. I'm pretty well reliant on it, actually. It's the reason why I could spend all my money on the last referendum, because I knew this pension was coming. But at the same time as these companies making massive profits, there's not that much going into hedge funds or private pensions, because they're having to divest themselves of Russian assets. So Shell took a hit of 2.1 billion divesting itself of Russian assets. I haven't seen the figure on how big a hit BP took, but I believe it's even larger. So we're being gouged, and the UK government is facilitating it. Meanwhile, the oil and gas giants are making a killing and laughing at us as they overcharge the energy providers for what they need to produce energy. Simple as that. Okay. Right, let's move on. In the Ukraine, it looks like Mariupol has finally fallen into Russian hands. There's still some battles going on around about the Stanislav, steel plant, but it's all over by the shouting. The Russians have opened up corridors to let the civilians out of the steel plant, but they'll probably be put in buses and whipped away to Russia. All right. But this is a big loss for the Ukraine. Mariupol's a big port, and that will allow the Russians to bring in all sorts of artillery and all sorts of troops via the ports. It's also being said that that on the 9th of May, Putin's going to announce, because he hasn't managed to take the whole of the Donbass region, it's expected that Putin's about to announce that this will go into a wider war, a full-on war with Ukraine, whereas at this point in time it's no. That will allow Putin to call up more conscripts and things like that and put many more boots on the ground. So all this tub-thumping for Bojo about the Ukrainians and the Russians not going to win this war, idea. They are going to win this war. It's what they do after it that's going to be the problem, because then we're going to have escalation. You vote, Moira, well done. There may well be massive escalation here, folks, and it's something to worry about. It really is. Right, now let's move on to Smalling and what the rags have to say. Now, what's interesting about the rags today, folks, in the paper review is, for some reason, it's all local rags. For some reason, here in Scotland, when the BBC's paper review came up at 7:30 this morning, there was no the big UK rags, really, that publish here in Scotland. There was no Fail, no Express, no Times, no Scotsman. It was all local rags. So you want to know what the local rags have to say? I may have a wee chance to have a wee look and see what the local rags have to say. Alright. The Metro goes on. Monster dad should never leave prison. Lucas Caspla, 41, of Dundee, found guilty of murdering his son, 2-year-old Julius Caspal. Right. The Herald goes on. I feel his fear and suffering every day, says mother of boy killed for revenge. And her name is Patricia. Nah, I can't. Sorry, folks. Can't even do it. I can spell it for you. I'm not going to be able to say it. Patricia, S-Z-C-Z-E-S-N-A-I-K. You can try and work it out yourselves, but I just can't get my lips wrapped around that one. Alright, and she feels her child's pain. I'm sure she's suffering. Really suffering. The Record goes on. My world stopped on day X murdered my son. The Edinburgh Evening News goes on. If I could only hold you in my arms again. This is all one story. This is all about this 41-year-old, 42-year-old guy from Dundee who murdered his 2-year-old son after he split for his wife. Absolutely tragic story. The Telegraph has Falklands vets call for exorcist answers. I spoke about this yesterday. Apparently the exorcist missiles that were being used in the Falklands War had a kill switch which could have been operated by, it could have been a radio signal sent out which would have killed these exocet missiles and just had them drop in the sea. Okay. The Glasgow Times goes on. Dad learns to walk again after freak fall. David McWaters, 42, had freak fall on skate ramp. What's a 42-year-old doing the skate ramp? Huh? Was he down there with a skateboard having fun? Actually, that's not a bad idea. I used to like skateboarding. I might have another go at it. Brilliant. The Press and Journal has Kirk Minister in dock as her dog bites parishioner. I thought that one was quite funny, actually. This is what the local rags are serving up every day. And they want to people buy the national and international rags. Anyway, some Kirk Minister's dog's bit of parishioner, so she's up in the dock for it. The Evening Telegraph has thug leapt from car during high-speed cop chase. Apparently some loonball jumped out his motor while it was on the go when he was being chased by cops. Absolutely nuts. I hope, no doubt he's got a few scrapes and bruises, this spanner. And the Evening Express has global crisis puts the bite on butteries. Now, for those of you who don't know what a buttery is, it's absolutely a gorgeous wee sort of flat roll thing that you get in the northeast. And it's absolutely, I'm telling you, it's a gorgeous, it's a lovely thing. It really is. I love them with a boiled egg in the morning. You know, with people put jam and savoury stuff and all that on them. But anyway, apparently there's a global crisis putting the bite on butteries because there's a shortage of palm oil, which is a key ingredient in the northeast's favourite pastry. Right, but if I'd known there was palm oil in it, the Davy boy here wouldn't have been eating it in the first fecking place. But I'm sorry, when I'm up there in the northeast, I'm a wee bit addicted to them, so I generally get one to go with my breakfast, you know what I mean? But the local rags aren't they half funny. But it's interesting, because even when I jumped onto the BBC in England, I couldn't find the papers down there either, so it appears there wasn't much of a paper review this morning. But that's but the local rags are quite funny, and that last one, that even beats the Star, that one, you know. In fact, that could have come straight out the mouth of one of the Star's boffins. I've not eaten it, Davy. I've not eaten butteries anywhere because of palm oil. Somebody just popped up, but they like them too. Oh, you can't beat a wee buttery. And I can highly recommend, if you're up in the northeast in Aberdeenshire, give them a go. They're absolutely fantastic. In fact, I think you can buy them in the supermarkets around here as well. So that's what I've got for you today, folks. I hope you found it entertaining. I hope you found it informative, especially stuff about the gerrymandering and the votes, the rigging of the electoral system. You know, that stuff's really important, that we remind ourselves what's going on down that road, because you're not getting that stuff in the mainstream media. That's the stuff that Davy goes looking for, you know. And it's been a wee while since we talked about the boundaries bill that's about to go through, which is the sister bill to this election bill. It's a way of rigging the vote, folks. Keep that firmly in your head. If we're looking for Labour to be the next government, or maybe the next government doing that road with SNP coalition, because remember, even if we vote for independence, it'll be 2026 before we break free, apparently. So there will be Scottish representatives sent doing that doing at the next Westminster general election. But Labour are no getting in. There won't be a Labour SNP coalition. The votes are being rigged. The elections are being rigged. And by the way, there's another thing I should tell you about it, is the amendment laid down by the Lords to keep the Electoral Commission out of the hands of the government. That get voted down and all. So they can rig the vote with impunity, because there's no Electoral Commission with any teeth is going to pull them up. This is really important stuff, folks. And it's important that we tell people about it, because democracy is now dead for Westminster. It's dead. There is no more democracy down that road in England. What they're doing today is just a kid on. This will be the last time they'll have to show an opinion. The last time. The next general election will be rigged. The Boundaries Bill will have passed. The election bill's already passed. 3 million voters staying right out of the game. 3 million. And remember, the average turnout for a general election down that road is about 40%. Taking the 3 million voters out of the game is a huge disadvantage to Labour. Huge. And as I say, the boundary changes, which will take 3 MPs for Scotland, 8 for Wales, and batter them into England for these new constituencies that are being formed. That's what you call vote rigging, folks, and with the Electoral Commission not having any teeth, then the Tories will be able to spend with impunity. They'll be able to do whatever they want to win. Absolutely anything. The other interesting thing about the election bill, folks, is it makes it easier for outside influences like the Russians, the Chinese, the Americans, the Japanese to finance political parties here. They won't have to declare where their funding's coming from. This is really serious stuff, folks. It really is. Anyway, as I say, I hope you found that entertaining. I hope you found it informative. Let's get the usual stuff out of the road. Well, you guys all piss off. Alright, when it comes to partisan politics, when it comes to, the question of independence, partisan politics in your pockets, get out there and vote till you bulk. As I said yesterday, rank the pro-independence parties, including the other party. Just hold your nose and do it. Alright? I don't think many people will, but that's my advice. Alright? And I got a bit of a shocker as I was driving to work this morning. In my own ward, there is a candidate running who's actually BNP, but he's not running under the British National Party. He's running under the British Unionist Party, is what they're calling it. Alright? But I don't think he'll get elected. But I was a bit shocked to find that sort of thing going on this morning in my own ward. Okie dokie. Right, so remember, partisan politics in your pockets when it comes to the question of Scottish independence. Learn your how you gonies and get out there and win hearts and minds. Okay. Support the independent media. You know the guys we're talking about. If they've got a crowdfunder going, and you've got a couple of shekels to spare, throw them in the pot. It's important that these guys keep up their work, especially the ones that do investigative work. I've done that sort of thing myself since I started broadcasting for you guys. And health messaging. Alright? I know it's just guidance now, but continue to wear your face masks in enclosed public spaces. Clean hands and surfaces regularly. Alright? When it comes to social distancing, use your napper. Have a look about you and say, how would that affect people if I was asymptomatic? And if you're still testing or you can afford to test, take tests and submit your results to NHS Scotland to try and keep track of what's going on out there with this thing. Remember, the testing museum is being wound down. So the figures that I'm actually being out are probably not that accurate. Alright? Now you guys look after yourselves. I'll be back tomorrow to do the last one. There's not going to be much news today, kids. I don't know what the hell I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, because let's face it, it's the local election today. I've been listening to the news all morning. There's nothing but bump on it. Nothing. nothing of any substance in it. Alright, you guys look after yourself. See you tomorrow.